Hello again. Are you guys sick of me yet? um, so I'm really excited about this conversation. So these are two of my friends, and Benji, you started an organization called Nature is Nonpartisan. Why?
Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. The environment should be a nonpartisan issue. And thank you. We got one clap up here. Thanks, Jay.
Yes.
So one person believes that.
Yes.
I just firmly know. I'm probably one of the few conservatives in this room. I'm a conservative environmentalist. I care deeply about the environment. I care deeply about climate change. I care deeply about protecting nature for future generations. And I'm very frustrated that this became a culture war issue because at the end of the day, like, the environment doesn't care about our partisan identity. And it didn't used to be a polarizing issue in America. The environment is too important for partisan politics. This planet that we call home is too important for partisan politics. And the next generation of leaders has to create a movement that makes the environment a nonpartisan issue and make sure that no matter if a Republican or a Democrat wins, that we get consistent, durable action. And that's what we're dedicated to doing.
You know, that's something that I think everyone obviously believes is true, and it's been so divisive. Now, you wrote a book called The Conservative Environmentalist. What does that mean? Like, what does it mean to say that you're a conservative environmentalist? And I think there's more here. Why do you think there's been the increased division between those who identify as conservatives and those who call themselves environmentalists, especially since conservative comes from the word conservation?
Yeah, it's a great point. So who here can tell me the percentage they think of Americans who would self-identify as environmentalists in 1990?
Any numbers?
Any numbers? Just throw them out. 50%. 50%? Didn't you say 80%? You can't cheat if I told you. I did say anyone. That's my bad.
You hit
anyone that I haven't told this before, too.
You hit the nail on the head.
It was 80% in 1990. Thanks. But it's 38% today. And, you know, we're gathered in this room at a time when that number should be higher than it was in 1990, right? We have Gen Z and millennials who care deeply about this issue. You would think the number's even higher. Right. And we know way more about the environmental problems that we have. So my book, The Conservative Environmentalist, was meant to try to show that it doesn't, like, environmentalist doesn't have to have a liberal connotation. I'm an environmentalist through and through. Everything I care about centers around the environment. That should be what an environmentalist is. It doesn't mean you're liberal or conservative.
What's the difference between respecting and caring about nature and being an environmentalist?
I don't think there should be one. I mean, I think environmentalist, that word might evoke that you're willing to take more of an action towards it, that's like part of your activism, part of who you are, past just caring about it. You're actually advocating for it.
But I also think that the word environmentalist has been kind of co-opted by the left, myself included. I'm very much on the left. And, you know, people were self-identifying as environmentalists. Conservatives, Republicans were self-identifying as environmentalists not that long ago. So I think that's what we're trying to move back to, you know, about caring for the planet.
Right.
And it's amazing because when Penguin Random House approached me about writing this book, we thought this title was going to be great because it was going to, like, conservatives and environmentalists were going to look at it and be like, this is so exciting. But conservatives hated it because it had the word environmentalist in it, and environmentalists and liberals hated it because it had the word conservative in it. So, you know, you live and you learn. But I think the whole point is, you know, language does matter.
Right. And
we've unfortunately co-opted so many words that have these connotations. We need to just center ourselves in the fact that this is something that impacts all of us. It affects all of us. We all do care about it, and until we stand together, we're never going to get the solutions that we need.
You know, it is so interesting because I'm old enough to remember when it was 100% not a political issue. And there was a big shift around 2000 that everything changed. And it's very difficult to understand because you've got so many people who identify as conservatives who are camping and they are, you know, going out and being in the outdoors, and it's very rural, which doesn't really make sense. So I'm wondering too, I'm completely going off of this, but I'm wondering too how they would feel about even the word environmentalist, since the environment is what that means, and that's always been synonymous with respecting nature. So I don't even know if there's an answer. I think I just said that.
Well, no, it's a really good point, question, etc. You know, the association that people have. So my job is going around and trying to figure out how we can convene people from both sides to get to bipartisan, nonpartisan solutions. When I tell conservatives that I'm an environmentalist, they don't think of the environment anymore. They think of AOC, they think of Greta, they think of like policies that they don't like. They feel like people are coming for their jobs in their communities. I grew up in Wisconsin, you know, my high school was across the street from a dairy farm, very on brand for the cheese state. And it was very apparent that there was like this fear of environmentalism as it is seen today, and that perception of it is not nature and the environment anymore, even though they care deeply about it. It's a political agenda. And so we have to take the politics out of it. Obviously, politics is a way to get things done, of course, but this is not a team-based issue. This is not like, you know, immigration. Like this should not be caught up in the same culture wars as those issues are, because we do share that love, and we have to take this out of that.
And the environmental space too, you know, as an activist the last 15 years, you know, I really changed a lot of the work that I've been doing, learning more about bridge building, and some of the words and terminology that I was using was alienating people on the right because those words have been co-opted and politicized. And so I've changed my framework for my own personal activism and even the work that we're doing with Nature is Nonpartisan by meeting people where they're at. And I think Hollywood has a really amazing opportunity to do that in scripts, in content, in meeting people where they're at, and showcasing the environment in a lens that people, say rural people or folks that are more conservative, can identify and see themselves in.
I think there's a whole culture of demonizing people, and I think that makes it so hard, because I think there's a frustration and a fear and an anger that is sort of a lot of younger people are frustrated, and so people are clinging on to labels. So how do you work to say what we want to do is we all want the solutions. We all want to have a better planet. We all want cleaner water. We all want our families to be safe. How do you then approach them in a way that is gracious and not angry?
I think you have to normalize it with validators that both sides can get behind. So we are super intentional at Nature's Nonpartisan. Half our team is liberal, half our team's conservative, half our...
Do they have fights like regularly on the weekends?
We actually are all like really close, and I think...
That's what I tell her she has to play.
I think most Americans, you know, if you were to sit down at a table, even if you don't agree on the same thing, if you're sitting down at a table, you're going to have a good conversation.
My mom and dad are vegan conservatives from Wisconsin. It doesn't make any sense
That makes
at all.
no sense at all. Across from the dairy farm?
Right. I mean, believe me, like they were a walking contradiction. Most people have such, like, we're not in the boxes that we've put ourselves in as Americans. And so, like, if you have the ability to break the narrative and break the norms, like, we're just trying to normalize that this is okay across party lines. We have a video coming out, hopefully this week, but maybe next week, of Van Jones and Brett Favre teaming up to talk about how important, you know, conserving the environment is. But having a Brett Favre, having a conservative validator, having a liberal validator all the time allows the people. It's a trust thing, and you can't just have one side dominating that. You can't just have conservatives either, and I'm not saying that. I think it's an authentic validator. So it's actually funny because my whole family of conservatives thinks vegans are kind of cool because my parents who are conservative are vegan. And so it's like a validation, right?
So when you were young, did they raise you to respect nature, and were you also in an environment where it was okay to sort of understand the other side?
Yes.
So
yes.
that's kind of how they made you?
Really wanted us to be open to different political views.
Right.
My sisters are liberal, my parents are moderates. My grandparents are conservative. I mean, and we all love each other more than anything because the family aspect is more important than the politics.
Meg, what about you?
Likewise with me, I have very conservative people in my family. I'm very liberal myself, but I'm also a vegetarian with a hunting license, full of you know, very interesting, you know, kind of like polarities. But I think that's, you know, you can't label someone just on who you voted for. And I think what we've found too is even liberals, conservatives, whoever you voted for, you don't necessarily vote for a candidate on 100% of the topics. I voted for Kamala. Do I agree with 100% of the things she voted for? No. Same with people who voted for Trump. They may have voted for him on one topic. And I think the environment is something that conservatives and liberals, and the data and polling backs this up. It's something that historically has been shown that we have common ground, and it's framed correctly without the partisan jargon. We do very much agree on a lot of the same things. We just look at it differently.
Right. Since climate and sustainability is such an urgent issue, especially with the younger population, how do you convince them then that this is not a political issue and to be more understanding of people who may have different feelings, just as you said, you're not voting, you're not going to agree with somebody all the time, but understand that this is an issue that we all share. How do you navigate the two groups together? I know your groups all love each other, but that's just you guys. There's the greater world where, especially with social media, everybody is at each other's throats. So how do you navigate that?
Well, it is difficult. Like, don't get me wrong. On our board, we have people like Debbie's on our board. There's two people on our board who have sued each other.
Yeah.
On different sides of the aisle.
And they're on our board.
It was me, and I sued Debbie. It was fun. It's truly like amazing what you can do, and there's tough conversations. Like, we've had tough conversations just in the last few months, obviously with everything going on, like how we handle that, how we navigate that, and there's definitely been disagreements. But you do share the end goal, and that's really critical. I think the biggest thing that I would do, say in response to this question is like, I would say the biggest challenge isn't that young people know that this issue shouldn't be political. We've known that growing up. I don't really know any young person that doesn't think it should be, nonpartisan. But then a lot of people say, well, but Democrats care and Republicans don't. We just need to elect more Democrats. And I understand that thought process to a certain degree because I'm a conservative who thinks my side has failed on the environment. But Republicans are going to win again, and then they're going to win again. And they're going to keep winning, and Democrats are going to keep winning, and it's going to keep being this back and forth. And we can't afford to only get action when one side's in office. We just can't. And so you can ignore the problem, or you can go to the root of it and fix it. And that's challenging, right? We're trying to change an entire political system. But that's the only thing that's worth it.
And a cultural movement too, because the constituents are the ones that get the elected officials in. And so exactly what Benji said, like changing the system, it's also up to the creators, it's up to the entertainers to really showcase the importance of coming together and to, align yourself with someone that you don't agree with all the time. You can have a good conversation, you can work together, you can tell a story together, and that will influence our politics too and our policies.
So being able to depoliticize this, you're in DC. How do you deal with the lobbyists who have money and agenda that want to keep these messages within each separate party? Because that's that business, which I don't like. That's that business, and which is so frustrating to me because it's almost like the politicians don't have free will because they want to win. And so is that something that you're trying to get to also? It's like, it really seems hard to me because these people benefit, unfortunately, from the divisiveness.
They totally do, and the incentive is to divide, right?
Yeah.
I mean, social media algorithms, the media, this is a challenge that we face. When we get a nonpartisan win, there's been actually a few in the last few months even of bipartisan environmental wins. Who wants to report on that when it's way easier to just make Marjorie Taylor Greene and somebody else on the other side look crazy? So that is a challenge that we face. I think I'm in DC every month, at least for a week, and I avoid living there like the plague because I think that the worst people in America live there. And yet what I've found is that the only way to beat the lobbyists is to beat them at their own game and create more power than they have. And the way you do that is, the only thing more important than money in politics is voters. I mean, you can even look at Trump. Trump was outspent like 10-1 by his primary opponents, but he still won the primary because he had the supporters. Money in politics only goes so far. If politicians see that there's an entire movement of Americans who demand environmental progress regardless of who wins, the lobbyists matter a lot less. So let's beat them because we need to create the change that will get us to durable conservation environmental wins, and we can't let those people stay in our way.
And you can ignore like what we are focusing on is the vast majority of Americans. The far right, the far left are actually closer to each other than they are the rest of us.
They need each other.
They need each other. They feed off of each other. And so those are the loudest voices oftentimes, but there are a minority. And so focusing on that, in the comment section, in dialogue, etc. Yes, that might be like clickbaity, but like the rest of us, the majority of us want solutions and are willing to work together. And we just need to do it also on a personal level, like working together.
So how does the organization get into the now subjective journalism world? Because there is no news, and so many people, even the people who try to get news don't get news, and the other people just read their social channels. So that's the challenge. Like for me, that's the challenge with trying to get the politics out and bring everybody together and say, you all want to have a planet. What the hell is wrong with you? And why are you fighting about it?
Yeah, it's a really good challenge. It's a challenging question because it's something that we still don't have the answer to. But I think being here, being with, aligning with people who have big platforms and have cultural influence is the best way to do it, because the media is not going to tell that story for us. We're going to have to tell people. But I also have this crazy belief that this like room by room approach does work. I've spent the last 8 years going around the country talking about this, and I don't have like the name of like an AOC or a Greta or something, but the amount of human lives you can change in small rooms and relationships you build, and then let that ripple out to other people, and you don't need to take credit for it. You don't even need to know that it happened, because it should just keep rippling without you even knowing. That's the best way to do it. And then I think at scale, we also team up with influencers and people who can tell it for us at scale. But I think we focus too much on social media and news media. It is an entertainment game. The real work happens in human interaction. And that's something that I think we're really dedicated to pursuing.
And it happens at the dinner table. I'm sure all of us here have families that have different political beliefs. It's about sitting down with your uncle that is what you think is like absolutely unhinged and wild, and having a heart to heart with them and finding that common ground. Like, did your family grow up like go fly fishing? Like, do you want to protect these areas that you enjoyed outside with your family? Like, there's other ways of connecting. We were talking about health earlier, health of your family. That's another connector. And so working on the local family room level, rooms like this, is exactly, to Benji's point, that's what any of us can do right now, because we are very hyperpolarized in our country right now, but it's up to us, voters, constituents, Americans, to make that not a reality in the future.
What about the faith community? You're like going to churches and synagogues and, running around and kind of working with those groups, because that to me seems like those are the people who have some common ground to begin with. Are you guys working with them at all?
Yeah, we've found that that's a very engaging community. There's a lot of deeply Christian people who want to leave the world better than they found it, and understand that, in their point of view, God gave us an earth to conserve and protect, right, and not just extract.
And that's in every religion. Every single
Yes.
religion on the planet began with honoring our planet.
Exactly. And I think if you can tap into that, but I've found that there's a lot of conservationists out there, people who hunt and fish and love spending time outdoors camping. They are some of the best environmentalists out there. I mean, I went down to a wetland in Louisiana where there's a group of duck hunters who were literally dedicating their entire lives to restoring the wetlands there, which is a natural carbon sink. It prevents against hurricanes. It provides habitat for animals, and it provides the habitat for them to duck hunt. But that is those people have the most connected value to nature out of anybody in the U.S. And they also had a very religious standpoint to why they were doing what they were doing. And I think if we don't, we're missing an entire group of people out there that cares so deeply.
Right.
And we need them.
Right.
Yeah, the environmental movement has kind of done a disservice by almost alienating and demonizing a whole section of the country.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the people in the movement. I think it's the partisan politics that have really influenced that, but it's really a movement of the people, and it's about the commonality that we all share, and we all share nature. We really do.
So how quick do you think you're going to get this done, guys?
but we launched a month ago, which is wild.
Maybe by June. Yeah, I don't know. I would say in 5 years, the environment will be a nonpartisan issue in America again.
Okay, guys, 5 years. How are we going to be in 2 years? Almost?
I think we're going to make more progress in this current horrible cycle that we're in than people think, because this is one of the few issues that people want to break through on. I think the next 2 years are going to be where the toughest work is done.
I think there people will unite, though, because
I agree.
Yes.
that's what I think.
And see through the headlines for glimmers of truth. And also, currently, there's 13 nonpartisan environmental bills, being proposed right now.
Just in Congress.
Since January. No one is talking about that. And we all need to be talking about that. We need to be encouraging more of that. We need to encourage our politicians to work across the aisle for nature and show that we want that. So calling them, being active, and celebrating these wins and not getting caught in the doom cycle, focusing on the long run, because nature needs us.
Thank you guys so much. This was great. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.